Over the past year, I have been using different cameras and lenses from Canon, Nikon, Sony, and other manufacturers. And every time I did a review or a comparison of two lenses or cameras, there basically all the time in the comments there started to be in the best case a nice discussion, but sometimes almost a war in the comments about which system is the best. And some people also said that I cannot basically do a fair review because I'm shooting Canon by myself. And I thought in this video I want to talk a bit about this, why I do the videos, how I do them, what's my motivation, and also try to answer which actually is the best camera system and why it might not be so important. First, I want to get some confusions out of the room. I do not own a Canon, Nikon and Sony lens and camera lineup. I just simply don't have the money nor the space in my apartment to store all of this. So I shoot only Canon. I only own Canon photography stuff, to be correct, and I just borrow sometimes from Nikon or Sony some cameras and lenses for testing them, or also from Canon a lens that I don't own. Sometimes if I'm interested in it, I just borrow it and return it a few weeks or a month after. So far, none of these manufacturers have ever paid me to do a review, so usually I just get the stuff for several weeks. Sometimes I also have to pay myself for shipping it back. Sometimes this is covered, but I don't get paid, and if this would be the case in the future, I would clearly tell this in the video so that it's a transparent video. So with that out of the way, why am I doing these videos? The answer is kind of threefold. First thing is I'm just curious about tech. Ever since I've been a child, basically, I liked playing around with tech, so I like to see what's new. I like to test things, to make up my own opinion and make up my mind about what I like and what I don't like, and I think it's nice to kind of compare these things, so I also wanted to share this with you. And that's already the second reason. I want to help you make an informed decision about which camera and which lens to buy. If I compare, for example, a Canon RF 100 to 500 with a RF 200 to 800, this video is mostly targeted at people that already shoot Canon mirrorless cameras. I think that's clear. If it's a video comparing the Nikon Z8 with the Canon R5 Mark II, then this is maybe a video either for those of you that are just curious about tech as I am, or for the people that are maybe still shooting with an older DSLR system with a rather inexpensive telezoom lens and want to upgrade to a more professional lens and to a mirrorless body. And then sometimes at this point it can be worth jumping ship to another camera brand, but usually if you already own like a, let's say, R5 and a 600mm f4, I don't think it makes much sense to switch to a Z8 with a 600mm f4 or vice versa. The third reason is that since I'm teaching several photography workshops each year in Switzerland, I think it's also my duty to stay more or less up to date with the different cameras, that I know how to use them, that I know their like quirks, but also their kind of cool features that you can use, like pre-burst, because not all kind of participants know how to get the most of each camera. Of course, it's hard for me to know every camera perfectly, but by now I have a very good overview about which autofocus mode I should use in a specific lighting situation with a specific composition for Nikon, Sony and Canon, and I think this brings some value to the customers, the participants of my workshops. To be fair, I also don't do it only for altruistic reasons. I also make some money with the gear reviews, even if the manufacturers don't pay me directly. One thing is, of course, if you click the videos and ideally watch it until the end, I get some money from YouTube due to the ad revenue. However, this is not a lot of money. It's certainly not enough to live from it. It's usually barely enough to cover the expenses. Sometimes it is not. This really depends on the kind of trip or excursions, photo shootings I do to test the lens or the camera. Another thing that I'm very grateful is if you support me either by a super thanks or even better, buymeacoffee.com, where for around $5 you can just support me if you really like the video and it was helping you with making up your decision of which lens to buy, and you said, wow, after the video I knew what I should do and it saved me maybe hundreds of dollars. If you give 5 to me, of course I'm very happy, so thanks for all that did that. And finally, I also put affiliate links usually below the videos. With these links, if you want to buy the lens anyway, you can just support my channel because I get like 2 or 3% of the purchase that you do before taxes if you buy over this link, and you don't pay more. So that's a nice way to support me as well. Now let's get to the next question, and this is, which camera is actually the best? I think it's impossible to answer it like this, because the question should be, which camera is the best for whom? There is different ways of doing photography. So first of all, I do wildlife photography and a lot of bird photography. I cannot give any recommendations about sports photography or people photography. Of course, I can roughly say this camera will be good for people, just based on the specs and my experiences with wildlife photography, but these nuances between a Nikon Z8 and the Canon R5, I know where each camera performs better in terms of autofocus. When it comes to wildlife photography, the Z8 is better in backlit, whereas the R5 is better in picking up the subject. But honestly, I have no idea how it performs for people photography, like let's say inside a church where there is not much light, for action photography, for soccer or something. This I just don't know. So if you want to know about these specific things, you need to watch another channel. Also, I would anyway recommend watching several channels before you make a purchase, because as much as I try to be objective, I think it's just impossible to be objective about something. Sometimes you just take a piece of gear and you just like it. It doesn't even have much to do with the brand. It's just that I like it more than another one. And for somebody else, this could be the opposite. I try to always basically take a step back and try to evaluate everything and mention all the pros and cons, but it can, in my opinion, never be completely objective. And the next thing, even within wildlife photography, there is different genres or also different types or styles of photography. Maybe if you don't do backlit photography at all, it might not matter if the backlit performance of one lens or one camera is better or worse than the other. However, if you often do backlit photography, it's very important. So this is another reason why I would always watch like the review of 2 or 3 different YouTubers, just because you get a more comprehensive image of the, or idea of the, what the lens or the camera actually, how it actually performs. Another important question is of course the price point and the budget that you can allocate to buying a camera or a lens, because there are some people that say they are happy to spend like 1,000, 2,000 more to get the very best. And for other, if they can get 98% of the camera for a bit less money, that's perfect for them. So I also try to cover this, but it's also very hard to give a final recommendation. I can just compare the cameras, say what I would do, but in the end you need to make the decision. And what's very important to consider is the lens lineup, because in the end the lens is much more important for how an image looks than the camera itself. Luckily by now both Nikon, Canon and Sony have a very nice lineup for the mirrorless cameras. There is some differences. For example, Canon is still a very closed market. There is only very few third-party lenses for the RF mount, whereas Sony is much more open. Nikon somewhere in between. For me this is not a big deal, because for wildlife photography I anyway prefer to use the native lenses. I just made the experience that they are more reliable in terms of autofocus, image stabilizer, sometimes also sharpness, but in the end that's up to you if this is important or not. I think for the standard lenses for wildlife photography, all of the 3 big manufacturers have some really great lenses. But I would rather start with checking if there is a specific lens that you need or really want, and maybe this is more the deciding factor than the cameras, because cameras, they get updated so quickly and they are all at a very similar level overall, whereas I think for lenses there is bigger differences. For example, for Nikon, I need to say I'm a bit jealous about the Z600mm f4 with this integrated teleextender. If this lens would exist for Canon, I would buy it almost immediately, probably. On the other hand, on my Canon, I really like the RF100 to 300 2.8, and that's a lens that doesn't exist for the Nikon Z mount or for the Sony E mount. So you need to decide what's important for you. So I think if you get a kind of comparable set of equipment from Nikon, Sony and Canon, with all of them you can take great pictures. Of course, don't compare an entry-level Canon with the flagship Sony, but if you stay at the same price point, I think the results are often comparable. Sure, one of them will do better in one situation, the other one in the other, and maybe for your style of shooting, brand X is overall better or more suited than brand Y. But even if you have brand Y, in I would say 99% of the cases, it just doesn't make sense to jump to another camera brand. In my opinion, it's just often a loss of money, and often you find out that there's also not everything perfect with the other brand. So that's just my opinion. In the past month or even year, I have been traveling to different countries, mostly around Switzerland, like in France, Italy, Austria, Germany, also to Spain several times. And sometimes I was there with different camera brands. And with all of them, I got great shots in the end. And I was never like bumped because, oh no, now I'm shooting with Nikon and I wish I had my Canon camera. I mean, of course, this happened for specific situations, but at the same time, I was also very happy at other situations that I had this Nikon lens with the flip-in tele-extender. So just pick what's best for you and don't get upset if in 1 or 2 years maybe another manufacturer brings something that is slightly better. I think way more important in the end is that you know how to take pictures, which settings really influence the picture, how you approach the animal, how you work with your composition, with the light and so on. If you want to learn more about that, check out my ebook about bird photography. I put a link in the video description. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.